Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center. I'm delighted to join Mildred with her movie, The Three Phases of Issa. Let's take a look at a clip.
Everything to me, and I wanna tell the world. Where are we going? We don't have anywhere to go. We're in a pandemic, remember? She's right, you know. We don't have anywhere to go. Come on, Issa. Stefan's not a bad person. Just has some broken pieces. Everybody can be fixed. Quiet.
Mildred, thank you. Welcome to the New Filmmakers LA family.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Oh, well, thank you for your film, but bringing it to us. Your film was, powerful. I don't think I'm ever going to forget it. It's forever in my mind, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you to talk about it. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Yes, so The Three Phases of Issa tells the story of a young woman who has been in this abusive relationship over the span of 20 years. And on the night of her 21st anniversary, another domestic dispute ensues, and she ends up having this existential experience where she encounters the two younger versions of herself and kind of has this debate amongst all of them to kind of figure out how she got into this relationship, why she stayed, and trying to seek that freedom that she desperately needs.
Firstly, what a tremendous idea to look at these different, these three phases of like how you are as a human being and what you go through and how you evolve through a horrible, horrific experience that many, many women have to go through, that are silenced. Where was that moment for you, that inspiration where you're like, you had this idea and the style and you wanted to turn it into a film?
The inspiration for the piece kind of came from something that I had originally written, which was a monologue, because it turned out it was an assignment from an instructor that we had at a studio where I was taking an acting class. And so we had to write a monologue for another student in the classroom, and our prompt was to write something about someone who is in a situation that they can't get out of. And so I was like, domestic abuse tends to be a situation that people have difficulty getting out of. Yeah. So I wrote this monologue about this woman who was sort of talking about this relationship that she's been in for over 20 years, for 20 years. And then the instructor decided, she kind of wanted to do a showcase of work that we had done and kind of expanding it and creating scenes. And I wasn't quite sure where to go with the piece that I had, or a new piece that I wanted. So I said, I'll take this monologue and I'll see if I can expand it. And then I thought about, just coming from the theater, there's a play called For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. And in the piece, there's these three friends, really good friends, who fall in love with this one guy. And so that kind of sparked this idea of, it would be interesting to see Issa having an encounter with the two younger versions of herself, sort of debating and discussing how she got, and reflecting and ruminating on how she got into this relationship, why she stayed so long. And so that's kind of where the idea came for that. And then eventually learning about a friend who also was in a situation similar in a sense, and so eventually dedicated the film to her as well. But the inspiration kind of came from sort of my theater background and wanting to expand the piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm amazing. It's amazing when you hear where the depth of the inspirations come from, really, and then it evolves into this film. Now you took on multiple roles for this, in front and behind. How was that experience? When was that decision made, and what in the kind of roles you wanted to take on?
Because it's funny, because that was originally not the idea. I was really only interested in playing one, and that was Issa 3, and she's the one who's in the driver's seat, for those who haven't seen the film yet, or when you get a chance to see it. And then having two other people play the other two versions, because I was like, that's gonna be a lot. But the director really insisted on me doing all three parts, because I think she just thought that would, deepen the storytelling. If it's all, because essentially it is her. It is you. It is her. Yeah. And so it would make more sense for me to play the other two versions as well. Yeah. So it was challenging, but I think also in a good way, because I was with a director who also took such great care in telling the story and was
Yeah.
also, I think, very accessible and also understanding, you know, if I need to take a moment or anything like that, because I'm having to go to so many places
Yeah.
playing these 3 different people.
Yeah. Mildred, you're a phenomenal actress.
Thank
like,
you so
you are
much.
so incredible.
Thank
It was
you.
painful to watch the experiences of Issa, but you were mesmerizing. Like, you know, I just felt like you just took us right there, you know, in all these different phases. And I'm just like, wow, how do you prepare for a role like that? It's not easy.
No, I mean, I think it's like just how I maybe prepare any role. I think in any other project that I do, I think it's really looking at the circumstances and sort of identifying, you know, how would I be if I were faced with such, you know, a situation. I think wanting to be as authentic in it as possible, doing my own research because I don't have a history with domestic violence.
Yeah.
So, you know, and seeing how it all kind of starts and how it kind of unfolds. And, you know, it was interesting because I watched a TED Talk with a woman who was talking about domestic abuse. And it's interesting because a lot of times I think we think of domestic abuse as being physical, you know,
Yeah.
because where you can see it.
Yeah.
It's kind of happening right in front of you. But also learning about just little things that you don't think about. One of the
Yeah.
examples was, you know, going out to dinner with someone
Yeah.
and they order for you.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't think, you're like, oh, and you know, maybe you're on a first date with somebody, you're like, oh, that's so cute. They want to order for me. You know, I think that's so romantic, but you don't ever think about that, oh, that could be the beginnings of someone who is controlling.
Yeah.
And you don't
Oh.
think about it. And
Yeah.
you're like, so small things like that. And so sort of learning about those things, and I think getting to the emotional hub of it, I think is really just the experience of it. I think the trauma behind it. I think wanting to be as authentic and genuine in that because it has never been
Yeah.
my own experience.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
yeah.
talking to other friends that I knew who did sort of experience abuse in some way, whether physical or mental.
Yeah. No, you did an amazing job, and you really captivated those particular moments where those almost kind of those subtexts of those, you know, like even when they were discussing in the car, you know, and just kind of saying, but he loves me, you know what I mean? Like, and you know, I've been on the receiving end of the bruises. I know, and I remember like just vouching, like, it's okay because
Yeah,
he's this and he
he's
does
this,
this.
yeah, yeah,
And so,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
just, you did a really amazing job. And I'm just, you know, taking it all from the context of, you know, again, I always think do you feel as well, like as a theater actor that you started, right? I mean, I just think that you learn so much discipline in theater
Oh, yeah.
as an actor. How
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
about it? Like, do you feel that way?
Oh, yeah. Discipline, you know, sort of your grit, like I think your stamina.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And I think theater also taught me about, you know, developing that emotional muscle and
Yeah.
kind of how to get yourself there in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And also releasing that in a healthy way.
Yeah.
But very much so teaches you,
Yeah.
and heart, you know, and work ethic and discipline. And
How is it for you seeing your writing come to life into a film? What was that experience like?
I think the first time I saw it was a little surreal because I don't come from the background of like writing. You know, I think when I was younger, you know, you write poems, and I think I'd always sort of been interested in language. I think I've always had a feel for language. And so, you know, into poetry and things like that, but never really about writing,
Yeah.
you know, as a form or as a discipline in some way.
Can we get more now? We need more from you, Mildred. We need more of
Yes,
your
I
writing.
do have things that so I
Yes.
have, and I think also, I think just as an artist, you know, claiming that
Yeah.
as well, and not being afraid to say, oh, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, because
Yeah.
I do it. It is something
Yeah.
that I do, and I'm, you know, even though I'm not formally trained in it, I don't know how many people actually are. I think you
No.
either, if you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller.
You're a storyteller, yeah, and you've got so many stories you can
Yeah,
tell,
and
you know, and
so-
only you can understand those stories. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you
Yeah.
can go to people to help you,
share, yeah.
to format it correctly.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think as long as you got the idea, it's
Oh,
really
yeah,
where
but-
it starts. No, I hope that you write
Yeah.
more, because this was,
Yeah.
it was hard watches, because it was poetic at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to these experiences and what, and you know, great idea of just the different levels of age, experience, the wisdom that you have, and how different you might be from, you know, when you were, you know, the younger version to a
Yeah.
more seasoned version, and
Right,
how
well-
those feelings are. And we change, we evolve, don't we?
We do, and
you know?
and how Issa was still sort of grappling with that, with that younger
Yes.
version of, because, you know, even though she is where she is now in this relationship, there had to have been love at some point, or
Yeah,
it wouldn't have
yes,
gotten, you know, this
absolutely.
far. She wouldn't have stayed, and so
Yeah.
still, and I think in that tugging phase of feeling like, oh, but I did love him.
Yeah.
He's somewhere in there is still that person that I fell in love with, you know.
The finale piece, which, you know, I'll allude to, was so mesmerizing, powerful. Like just seeing that unleash was really incredible to see. I was crying my eyes out with my 2 cats at home, and I also feel that your film has a real essence of importance for education and understanding, empathy, or whether one has gone through that experience. And I'm curious for you, having made this film, what do you want your audience, what do you want your audience to experience from the film that you created?
Yeah, I think I want, you know, anyone who watches it, you know, female, male, whichever, to understand that they are not in this alone, that they don't have to sort of suffer in silence, that there are places that they can go to if they find themselves in these situations that they don't think that they can get out of,
Yeah.
that there is help for them. And wanting it to be that sort of conversation piece, and
Yeah.
hoping that in some way it sets somebody on a journey for their own healing.
Absolutely.
You know, whether getting out of that or out of it, and now in that phase of working through it, the emotional healing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing it. Amazing. You're doing it. So what is, I mean, I know you're literally in rehearsal right
Yeah.
now. What is next? What's going on? What's next on the horizon?
So film-wise, the next thing is a short film that I have written called Nola, the Beginning, which centers, it's a supernatural drama, which I'm excited about. And it centers on, it's a sort of visual narrative on Black motherhood in America, sort of told from this supernatural, I'm not sure how you, sort of supernatural telling, I guess.
Ooh.
But yeah, I started an independent production company called Little Black Pro Production, and my mission in that is bringing together the two things that I'm interested in, which is faith and social justice. So the piece sort of speaks to that, just as the 3 Faces of Issa did, and that idea that faith is needed, you know, to sort of work through the social injustices that we
Yeah.
all face, because I think there has to be some sort of faith in that for you to still get up every morning and want to pursue that idea that the world can change in some way, that you can have some effect on the world in a big way.
I'm so glad you're a filmmaker. Thank goodness. Thank
you.
goodness you're telling stories. That's amazing.
Thank you.
For any of our filmmaker in this audience or out there, do you have any, as a creative artist, do you have any snippets of advice or things that you go by that help you as a creative?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is finding you a tribe of people to work with. I think that's what made the experience of making Issa so wonderful, is that I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a tribe of people, other artists that I knew and was excited to work with. So I think finding people that you can collaborate with and who are just excited about the work that you're doing, that you are. And then also just to keep going, you know, it gets hard, it gets difficult, but as long as you're still passionate about it, just keep going. Don't ever stop. Don't ever
See?
stop.
Did you hear that? Don't ever stop, Mildred says, okay?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
bringing your film to us.
you.
Welcome to the family.
Yes,
and,
very excited.
really excited to see your next project, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
everybody.